I'm Mariah Ellis, 42, a single mother and paralegal. The fluorescent lights in the family courthouse hallway buzzed with a faint flicker, their hum nearly drowned out by the squeak of patent leather shoes and the dull murmurs of tense families gathered for judgment. I stood near the courtroom door, just outside the reach of the bailiff's gaze, my back pressed lightly against the beige wall. My parents were already seated inside, front row, their attorney polished and prepared, smug with certainty. The name on the case docket was mine, but no one in that room had spoken to me like I belonged there. I clutched a manila folder, its corner worn and bending from my grip. Inside were letters, school reports, even a drawing my son had done last year, evidence of the life we had built together. Quietly, away from the judgmental eyes of my family. A life they now claimed was dangerous, unstable, unfit. Name, the security officer at the courtroom door asked, barely glancing up. Mariah Ellis. I hesitated, as if saying the mother out loud made me sound defensive already. He looked at his clipboard, tapped a page with his pen, and then raised an eyebrow. They've already gone in. You're not listed as primary petitioner. Wait here. My stomach dropped. But I'm the respondent. This is about my son. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step aside if you're not on the immediate docket. The judge is already in session. Step aside. That's what they always did to me. At every holiday dinner, at every school meeting they offered to attend on my behalf. Now they were stepping into the courtroom to take my son while I was asked to stand in the hallway like I didn't exist. I gave a small, humorless laugh and looked around the corridor just as strangers, some crying, some pacing, some praying silently under their breath. I wasn't crying. My eyes were dry, but there was a certain ache, heavy behind my ribs, like the quiet weight you carry when you know no one's coming to stand beside you. Excuse me. I turned slightly toward the officer again. Can I at least speak with the judge? They're saying I'm an unfit parent. I have my son's records, his grades, his medical forms. This is a mistake. He shook his head. They'll call you if they need you. Just wait. Wait. Again, always waiting to be taken seriously, waiting to be seen. I sat down slowly on the hard wooden bench outside the courtroom, still gripping the folder like it might anchor me to the floor. If you're watching this, and you've ever had family turn against you, really turn, you know this moment. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's quiet. It's subtle. It's when someone who raised you, who smiled at your childhood birthday parties, suddenly turns your own child into a weapon. If you've been through something like this, if your name was erased in places it should have been honored, comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I see you. You're not invisible. And if you've ever faced a courtroom or a family dinner table where no one believed your side, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with me. Because what happened next changed everything. A faint voice from inside the courtroom filtered through the door. My father's voice, composed, calm, rehearsed. He was telling the judge I was unstable. He mentioned psychological stress, long absences from the child's life, even hinted at addiction, lies, all of it. But they said it so politely, so calmly, that it sounded like the truth. A woman in a gray skirt suit emerged suddenly from the courtroom. Mariah Ellis. I stood so fast I nearly dropped the folder. Yes. The judge is hearing your parents' side first. It's an emergency petition. You'll be called later. I nodded, biting the inside of my cheek. Can I just say something now? I'm sorry. You'll have to wait for your turn. She turned back, the door slowly swinging shut behind her. And that's when I heard footsteps from the far end of the hall. Fast, purposeful, familiar. I turned. He walked in wearing the navy blue hoodie I'd bought him last Christmas. his hair a little too long over his eyes, but those eyes locked right on me. My son, Eli. Behind him, a man in a blazer, holding a thick folder. He adjusted his glasses, nodded respectfully at me, then gave the officer his card. I'm attorney Brent Lawson, representing Eli Ellis. We're requesting immediate audience with the judge. The officer blinked. Eli's a minor, no longer under their guardianship. The lawyer replied, Eli is petitioning for legal standing as a youth client with independent representation, based on emancipation clauses under emergency status. I blinked. Emancipation, Mariah, Eli said softly, stepping toward me. I read everything. Your journals, the court letters, the stuff they filed. His voice trembled, but he kept going. I'm sorry it took me this long. I'm not a little kid anymore. I want to speak. The courtroom door opened again. A different bailiff now, his eyes scanning the hallway. Eli Ellis. Yes. Judge Lambert will see you. Now. As Eli and his lawyer walked in ahead of my parents, ahead of the legal drama they had carefully orchestrated, every face in the hallway turned. Whispers rose. And for the first time, my name was said clearly by the judge himself, echoing down the corridor. Let's continue with the presence of the minor and his legal counsel. The court recognizes Ms. Mariah Ellis as the biological and custodial mother. Her statements will be heard in full. The bailiff motioned me in. People stared. My father froze. I stepped into the courtroom. The atmosphere shifted like a curtain pulled back from a window. They weren't ready for this. And suddenly, I was no longer outside the story. I was in it. The courtroom was colder than I remembered. Not physically, the temperature was average, but there was something clinical, something chilling in the way everyone looked at each other without really seeing. I stepped in behind Eli and his lawyer, my folder still in hand. But now it felt less like a shield and more like a witness. A mute one. Yes, but still a witness to what they had tried to erase. My mother turned around first. Her jaw didn't drop. She didn't gasp. She just stared like she was seeing a stranger she'd once known in passing. My father wasn't as composed. He half rose from his seat. His lips parted like he was about to say something, but the judge's voice cut through the air before he could. Everyone, please be seated. The court is now reviewing new representation brought forward by the minor, Eli Ellis. The gavel didn't fall, but the silence was as hard as stone. Eli sat to my left, his hands folded, eyes fixed on the judge. I noticed a faint bruise near his knuckle, probably from wrestling at school, or maybe just an accident. Still, it made something sharp twist in my stomach. Had anyone noticed it before? Had anyone asked him about it? Mr. Lawson, Judge Lambert began, leaning forward slightly. You're presenting this as a legitimate counsel arrangement. With what grounds? Brent Lawson stood, calm and clear. Your Honor, my client is 16, intellectually competent, and presenting verifiable claims of misrepresentation by both maternal grandparents. In addition, my client has retained legal consultation through private funds, and we are submitting emergency documentation under Article 7C of Youth Representation. The judge took the papers without a word. My parents watched like people witnessing their own home slowly fill with smoke. They weren't afraid yet, but they were starting to smell the truth. Mariah Ellis, the judge said, finally turning to me. You were not listed as a petitioner, but the court will now hear your statement. Do you have anything prepared? I stood, my knees trembling more than I expected. Yes, Your Honor, I do. I opened the folder. The one they had tried to claim was just scraps of paper. One by one, I laid them on the table. Eli's school progress reports, his therapist's signed note about our consistent sessions, letters from his teachers. I even included a birthday card he'd written me last year that simply said, "Thanks for never leaving. I never abandoned my son," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "I work 2 jobs, both within the law field. I have never missed a single school conference, and every night that I came home too late to make dinner, I left him notes on the fridge. I have texts, photos, dated calendar events, everything." The judge nodded, flipping through each document slowly. I kept going. The statements made by my parents contained several lies. For example, they claimed I was hospitalized for a mental breakdown 2 years ago. That's false. I was undergoing outpatient therapy for work-related stress. They knew that. They just chose to twist it. I could feel my father shifting beside his lawyer. My mother's lips were drawn tight, and her gaze avoided mine completely. "They also claimed," I said, forcing the next words out, "that Eli expressed a desire to stay with them permanently. That's not only untrue, it's manipulative. Eli has told me privately that he feels pressured, that they offer him gifts and privileges I can't afford just to win his loyalty." At that, Eli lifted his head. "It's true," he said quietly. Every eye in the room turned to him. "They told me Mom couldn't take care of me. They said I'd have more freedom with them. But it wasn't freedom. It was control, disguised as comfort. My mom never stopped trying, even when I ignored her, even when I believed them." The judge leaned back, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. "I see." For a moment, no one spoke. Then my parents' lawyer stood. "Your Honor, I must object to the emotional framing being introduced here. While we acknowledge that minor Eli Ellis is articulate, the petition is based on our client's belief that the child's welfare," belief the judge interrupted, "or projection." There was that moment again, the one where the foundation starts to crack, and everyone tries to pretend it's just a breeze. Brent Lawson cleared his throat. "Your Honor, we would like to request not only that this emergency petition be dismissed, but that a no-contact order be considered against the petitioners until cleared his throat. "Your Honor, with all due respect." The judge raised a hand. Enough. A pause. Then he turned to me. "Ms. Ellis, do you wish to request sole physical and legal custody reaffirmation, pending this hearing's closure?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. He nodded. "So ordered." The gavel struck once. I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. But I turned to Eli, and he turned to me, and something passed between us. Not just relief, not just love, recognition, the kind that says, "We survived that." As we stood to leave, my parents remained seated, as if waiting for the curtain to rise again, for the show to go on. But there would be no encore, not this time. Out in the hallway, Brent gave me a small smile. "You did good in there. Thank you," I said, still dazed. "How did you even meet Eli?" He shrugged. "I didn't. He found me. Said he read an article I wrote on youth autonomy. Said he had a feeling I'd listen." I turned to my son, blinking back tears. "You read legal journals now?" Eli smiled. "Just a little. Just the interesting ones." We walked out into the sunlight, the courthouse doors shutting behind us with a final click. I thought of everything they'd said about me, every word they'd twisted, every letter they'd written to make me look like a ghost in my own life, but I was still here. And this time, my son was walking beside me. I thought winning in court would mean everything would go back to normal, that my parents would retreat into silence, maybe disappear from our lives for a while. But family doesn't vanish just because a judge slams a gavel. It morphs, it recoils, and sometimes it claws back harder. Eli and I spent that evening in silence, the kind that isn't empty but full of things too complicated to say. We were sitting on the couch, takeout cartons on the coffee table, a documentary playing quietly on the screen. He wasn't eating much, just moving rice around with his chopsticks. "You okay?" I asked, knowing he wasn't. He nodded but didn't look up. "They texted me." I felt it in my chest before he even showed me. He handed over his phone. 3 unread messages from my mother. One said, "We were only trying to help." Another, "You'll regret siding with her when you're older." And the last, "She's manipulating you. She always has." I stared at the words. They weren't surprising, but they still cut. Not because I believed them, but because they were aimed at my son now. Not just me. They couldn't take him, so they were trying to corrode him from the inside. "I'm blocking them," Eli said quietly, already swiping through the settings. "You don't have to," I said, even though I wanted him to. "If you ever want to talk to them again, I won't stop you." "I don't," he said. "At least, not right now." We didn't say much more that night, but when I went to check on him before bed, I saw the courtroom papers fanned out on his desk, the same ones we submitted. His name on the top line, his own words in the affidavit. There was power in seeing his handwriting on those documents, like he had stepped out from behind the curtain of childhood and stood beside me, fully present. The next morning, I got a call from my aunt, my father's younger sister, Lorna. We hadn't spoken in years. I almost didn't pick up, but something made me press accept. "Mariah," she said, voice dry like paper. "I heard what happened in court. I waited. I just want to say, I believe you. I always have." I didn't say anything at first, just let her keep talking. "Your parents, they never forgave you for having Eli outside of marriage. You know that, right? They convinced themselves that you were a child raising a child, that you'd eventually mess it up, and they'd have to step in. When that didn't happen, it made them resentful, quietly, but deeply." I closed my eyes. "Why didn't you ever say anything before I was afraid of being cut out?" she said. "But I'm tired now. And Eli, he was so brave. I wanted you to know that." "Thank you," I said, and I meant it. Even though it came years too late, the days that followed were quiet, at least on the surface. Eli went back to school, and I returned to work. I started to breathe again, the kind of breathing that wasn't tight with anxiety. We cooked together more, even watched some old home movies I had buried in the closet. But underneath, I could feel the tension. The way Eli hesitated before answering unknown numbers. The way I jumped every time someone knocked on the door, expecting some new motion or accusation to be dropped on my welcome mat. Then, one Saturday morning, it happened. We were out grocery shopping when I noticed someone watching us near the produce aisle, a woman in her 60s, gray scarf, designer purse. She kept peeking over the apples at us. When I caught her gaze, she didn't look away. Finally, she approached. "You're Mariah, right? Walter and Denise's daughter." I straightened. "Yes. I just want you to know, I'm friends with your mother, and what you did to them in court. That was shameful." Eli stepped between us before I could respond. "She didn't do anything shameful. She told the truth." The woman blinked, surprised. "You should be grateful for your grandparents. They gave you stability. They tried to give you a better life. I already had a life, he said. They just didn't like it. She scoffed and walked off. But the moment stayed with me the whole day. Later, as we packed away groceries, I turned to Eli. Thank you for stepping in earlier. He shrugged. I didn't like the way she looked at you. Like you were something rotten. That's how they've always looked at me. Well, I see you, he said. All of you. I nearly cried right there, arms full of oranges. That week. We started therapy together. Joint sessions. Not because anything was broken, but because we didn't want things to get stuck. Eli asked questions I wasn't expecting, like why I never remarried, why I let Grandma and Grandpa control so much for so long. They were louder than me. I told him once. For a long time. I thought being quiet meant being respectful. But I've learned silence just gives loud people more space. He nodded. You're not quiet anymore. No, I said. Not anymore. One afternoon, as we walked through a nearby park, Eli asked if we could stop by the small cafe near the fountain. I hesitated. It was owned by a family friend of my parents, but we went anyway. The woman at the counter didn't recognize me, or if she did, she didn't say anything. Eli ordered hot chocolate, and we sat near the window. Do you think they'll ever apologize? He asked. I don't know, I said honestly, but I don't need it to move forward. He stirred his drink. I'm still figuring out how to feel. Sometimes I miss them. Then I remember the way they talked about you, and I get angry. That's fair, I said. Feelings don't have to be clean. Do you think I should write them something not to send? Just for me? I smiled. I think that's a great idea. He pulled a notepad from his backpack and began scribbling while the sky outside turned to dusk. I watched him the way he tilted his head while thinking, the slight frown when he couldn't find the right word. I used to do the same when I was his age. It felt like I was seeing my own younger self reflected in him, but steadier, braver. When we got home that night, he handed me the first page of what he'd written. It wasn't a letter. It was a list. Things I know now. The title read, My Mom Never Left Me. My mom doesn't yell, but she never gave up. My grandparents gave me things, but my mom gave me time. I choose who I become. I see everything now, and I still choose her. I folded the paper and placed it in the same folder that once held our defense. This wasn't a war anymore. It was the rebuilding. And we were laying the first bricks together. Spring came slowly that year, the kind of spring where everything was hesitant to bloom. Rain lingered longer than it should have, and even the trees seemed unsure whether to unfurl their buds. I felt the same way, like I was holding my breath between chapters, afraid the last one might bleed through again. Eli was doing better. That much was clear. His grades had stabilized, and he was laughing more. Real laughter. The kind that vibrated from his chest and didn't stop short like it used to. He spent afternoons at the skate park or reading in his room, sometimes emerging just to tell me something random he'd learned, like how some frogs can freeze solid and thaw back to life. Resilience, he said, with a grin. Nature's got it figured out. I knew better than to assume we were safe from drama. Though, the last message my mother had sent weeks ago, "You'll come crawling back when she fails again," still sat unread in Eli's inbox. We never blocked her, but neither of us responded. Silence was its own kind of clarity. One Wednesday afternoon, I got a letter in the mail. A real letter. Cream-colored paper. Thick and expensive. Folded into a matching envelope with no return address. I opened it slowly, heart already bracing. It was from my father. He wrote in cursive. Always had. Mariah, your mother doesn't know I'm writing you. She wouldn't approve. I'm not asking you to forgive us. We were wrong. I see that now. But I need you to understand where we were coming from. We saw you working yourself to the bone, never asking for help, never letting us in, and it scared us. We thought we were doing the right thing by stepping in, but I see now we weren't stepping in. We were stepping over you. Eli was right to stand by you. He's strong because of you. That's something I was never able to admit out loud, but I'm saying it now. If there's ever room in your life for a conversation, not forgiveness, just conversation, I'd be grateful. Dad. I sat with the letter in my lap for a long time. The living room was quiet. The clock ticked like a soft heartbeat, and the shadows of tree branches swayed across the rug from the window. Eli came out eventually, hoodie slung over one shoulder, and noticed the paper. What's that? I handed it to him. He read it in silence, then passed it back. I don't know how to feel. He said, it's like he's trying to walk it back without really walking through it. That's a good way to put it. Are you going to respond? I folded the letter. Not yet. Okay, he said. Then, almost reluctantly, if you do, can I come with you? That made me look up. You want to? I want to see him say it. I want to hear it. I want it to be real. I nodded. Me too. We didn't reply to the letter right away, but something about knowing it existed shifted the air around us, like a door had cracked open, even if we weren't ready to walk through it yet. That weekend, Eli's school had their annual open house. I was used to these things, the parent mixers, the student artwork pinned along the hallways, the awkward conversations near the punch table. But this time felt different. Maybe because now, when I introduced myself, I didn't hesitate. I wasn't the mom who might lose custody. I was just his mom. Full stop. One of his teachers. Mr. Alston approached me near the English display. You're Eli's mother. Right. I smiled. Yes. I wanted to tell you he wrote something for our creative writing assignment that really moved me. Would you like to read it? He handed me a printout. The title was simple. The House That Stood Still. It wasn't long. Just a page and a half. A metaphor-laden piece about a house that everyone thought was abandoned. People walked by it, judged it, said it was rotting inside. But the house stayed standing, quiet, sturdy, waiting. And one day, the boy who had lived there returned, not because the house begged or promised gifts, but because it never stopped being his. I read it twice. Thank you, I whispered, my throat tight. You've raised a remarkable young man, Mr. Alston said. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded, grateful and stunned. After open house, Eli and I got ice cream from the little stand near the community center. He got mint chocolate chip, like always. I got vanilla with hot fudge, like always. Some rituals never break, no matter how much else does. We sat on the curb outside, licking cones under the late afternoon sun. I'm thinking about calling him, I said, unwrapping a napkin from my wrist. Not to make peace, just to speak. Maybe clear the air. Eli didn't answer right away. He chewed thoughtfully. Yeah, he said finally. Maybe I'd like that too. So we did. I called the number I still remembered by heart. It rang 6 times before a familiar voice answered, older, slower, but unmistakably him. Mariah, my father said. Hi, I said. I got your letter. A long pause. Thank you for reading it. I didn't say I forgave you. I know, but I'm not hanging up either. He laughed quietly. I'll take that. We spoke for 20 minutes. Nothing dramatic. Just simple things. The weather. His health. How my mother was still angry. Still bitter. How he wasn't defending it anymore. How he missed Eli's birthday last year and didn't know how to fix that. When I asked if he wanted to meet, he hesitated. Would Eli even want to see me? He asked if he could come. I said. Silence again. I'd like that. He said. More than you know. We agreed to meet at a neutral place, a public park with a coffee stand and enough space to walk, without awkward silences piling up. Eli and I arrived first. He wore a collared shirt, something he rarely did, and I knew it meant he was nervous. My father showed up 5 minutes late. He looked smaller than I remembered, not in stature, but in presence. Like the authority he used to carry had been shed somewhere behind him. Hi, he said, gently. Eli didn't rush to hug him. He didn't smile either, but he nodded, and they walked slowly down the path, just ahead of me. I watched them talk, gestures small, voices low, nothing performative. At one point, Eli handed him something, a folded piece of paper, maybe a drawing, maybe that list from weeks ago. I didn't ask. When we finally left, Eli said, "It didn't fix everything, but I'm glad I went." Me too. That night, we ate dinner in quiet, not because there was tension, but because peace has its own silence, softer and less urgent than the kind we used to know. And for the first time in years, I let myself believe we were building something new, something that might actually last. April turned to May, and for once, the world didn't feel like it was about to collapse. The courtroom was behind us. My parents, though not reconciled, had retreated into a quiet they hadn't offered in years. Eli was sleeping through the night again. I was, too. And for the first time since he was a toddler, we started talking about the future like it wasn't something to fear. One Sunday afternoon, we were sitting at the kitchen table, sorting through old photo albums I had finally decided to unbox. They had been packed away in a bin beneath my bed, not because I didn't care about them, but because they carried 1,000 little weights. Eli pulled one out. The cover cracked with age. "Is that me?" he asked, pointing to a toddler in swim goggles, grinning in a plastic tub in our old apartment. "Yep," I said, smiling. "You refused to get out for 2 hours. The water was cold and your lips were blue, but you kept saying you were training to be a SEAL." He laughed. "I was a weird kid. You were a bright, hilarious, unstoppable kid." He turned the page and his smile faltered. The next photo was of him at 5 years old, sitting between my parents on Christmas morning. There was a red wagon, a mountain of gifts, and my face blurry in the background, half cropped out. He didn't say anything for a while. "They really tried to erase you, didn't they?" he asked quietly. I nodded. Sometimes it felt like they were more comfortable with me invisible, like it was easier to believe I didn't exist than to deal with the fact that I did. He traced his finger over the image. "They tried to make me see the world without you in it, like it would be better that way. But you didn't believe them. Not at first," he admitted. "But for a while, I think I wanted to. It was easier than admitting they were lying." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "It's okay," I said. "You're not responsible for the stories adults try to tell themselves." He nodded, biting the inside of his cheek like he always did when he was trying not to cry. Then he looked up. "Do you ever wish you'd yelled more? Fought back harder sooner?" I thought about that for a long time before answering. "No," I said. "Because if I'd been louder, they would have said I was unstable. If I cried, they said I was hysterical. If I stayed calm, they said I didn't care. There was no winning their approval. So I stopped playing by their rules." He stared at me like he was memorizing that sentence. Then he smiled. But this one wasn't bitter. It was proud. Later that evening, he asked if we could visit Grandma Lorna. It had been years since we'd seen her. But something in him wanted to reconnect with someone on that side of the family who hadn't turned against us. I agreed. We called her that night, and she sounded genuinely touched. "You two coming over would mean a lot," she said. "I've got some old books and photos I think Eli should see. I've held on to them in case you ever found your way back." Her house hadn't changed much, same floral couches, same dusty ceramic birds on the windowsill. But she greeted us at the door with open arms and eyes that looked regretful, but warm. Eli sat with her on the porch swing while I helped set out lemonade and a plate of shortbread cookies she'd clearly baked just for the visit. "I remember when you were this big," Lorna said, motioning to her knee. "You used to call me Grandbird because of those little statues." "I still remember that," Eli said with a grin. "I thought they were real pets." She laughed, the sound fragile and grateful. "You always had such an imagination?" After a while, she brought out a box. Inside were things I hadn't seen in decades. Drawings I did as a kid. Letters I'd written from college. Even a Mother's Day card I gave her the year after my mom forgot. "I kept them," she said, looking at me. "I didn't know what to do, but I couldn't throw you away. Your family, no matter what they said." That night, when we left her house, Eli was unusually quiet in the car. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded. "Just thinking." "About what?" "About how messy families are. I used to think people were either good or bad, helpful or toxic. But maybe they're just confused, hurt, scared. That doesn't excuse the damage." I said. "I know," he replied, "but it makes it easier to breathe." We drove home with the windows down, the night air cool against our cheeks. The next day, something happened that shook me in a different way. I got a call from Eli's school counselor, Ms. Vega. She asked if I could come in for a meeting, nothing urgent. She said, "Just a check-in." When I arrived, she greeted me with that professional smile educators wear when they've been trained to deliver both good and bad news without letting you guess which. "We've noticed a shift in Eli," she said as we sat across from each other. "In a good way. He's more focused, more expressive. He started volunteering in class. He even submitted a proposal to help start a support group for students going through family issues." I blinked. He never told me that. He said he didn't want to make a big deal out of it until it got approved. She leaned forward slightly. "I just wanted you to know whatever you're doing at home, it's working. We see him now. And I think he sees himself too." I walked out of that meeting in a daze, not because I was shocked, but because I realized I hadn't given myself credit in a long time. I had been so focused on surviving, proving, defending, that I forgot I was also raising a human being. And not just raising him well. When I got home, I found him sitting on the porch, sketching something in his notebook. I sat beside him and said, "So, a support group?" "Huh." He looked sheepish. "Yeah. Surprise I'm proud of you." He shrugged, smiling. "I just thought, maybe there's someone out there sitting alone at lunch thinking they're the only one with family drama." "There's always someone," I said. "But now maybe they'll feel seen." He tore out the sketch he'd been working on, a simple pencil drawing of two figures standing back to back. One large, one small, both casting the same shadow. "I was going to give this to you for Mother's Day," he said. "But I guess it fits now." I didn't have words, just a tear that ran down without permission, quiet and unannounced. That night, as I turned off the lights and checked the locks, I paused in the hallway. I used to stop there every night and listen for movement in Eli's room just to make sure he was breathing, still there, still safe. This time, I heard laughter. He was on a video call with a friend, talking about some school project, cracking jokes, being 16. And for once, I didn't listen long. I just smiled, walked to my own room, and let the silence carry me to sleep. We were healing not loudly, not all at once, but piece by piece. The letter came on a Monday. It was plain. No envelope. Just folded in thirds and slipped into our mailbox like it didn't mean to change anything. But the handwriting was unmistakable tight, even cursive, like it was trying not to shake. My mother. I sat with it unopened on the kitchen counter for most of the afternoon. I washed dishes. I vacuumed. I reorganized the spice rack. Anything but read it. When Eli got home, he noticed it right away. Is that from her? I nodded. Are you going to read it? I don't know yet. He didn't push. He just gave a small shrug and walked to his room. But I knew he was listening from the hallway. So finally, with the sun starting to slip through the blinds in gold strips across the floor, I opened it. Mariah, I know you don't want to hear from me. I wouldn't blame you if you never did again. I'm writing because I realized something I should have seen years ago but chose not to. I didn't understand how to love you when you didn't do things my way. I confused control with care, and when you became a mother, I panicked. Not because I thought you'd fail, but because I saw how easily you were doing what I could never do, love without conditions. I told myself I was protecting Eli, but really, I was trying to rewrite the story. One where I wasn't the parent who'd caused so much damage. One where I still had the final word. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a response. I just needed to say this out loud. Even if it's too late. Tell Eli. I think about him every day. Mom. I folded the letter slowly. There were no justifications. No but, or if only. And that was what made it sting. It wasn't manipulation this time. It was surrender. When Eli came back out, I handed it to him. He read it carefully, then looked up and said, "Do you believe her? I don't know yet." I answered, "But I think she believes herself. That's something." He sat beside me and leaned into my shoulder. It's weird. I thought I'd want her to say something like that. But now that she did, I'm not sure what to do with it. You don't have to do anything with it, I said. You can let it exist without inviting it in. He nodded. I think I will. For now. The next few weeks passed quietly. The air grew warmer. The flowers bloomed. Life didn't change in any big way. But there was a subtle ease between us. Fewer waiting. Friday came fast. I wore a soft blue dress I hadn't touched in years. Eli threw on a denim jacket and even combed his hair, though he swore it was just because it wouldn't lay flat otherwise. The community center was buzzing with music and laughter. Tables of food lined the walls. Kids darted between adults with balloons. And an old DJ played 90s hits with zero shame. Lorna waved us over, her arms full of bingo cards and soda cups. You made it? She grinned. And look at you two, stylish. We settled into a table near the back. Eli quickly drifted toward a small group of teens near the basketball court, leaving me to small talk with neighbors I vaguely recognized. It wasn't awkward, not really. More like a gentle re-entry into a world I used to avoid. At one point, I stepped outside to breathe. The noise had grown thick and warm inside. The night air wrapped around me like a shawl. That's when I saw him, my father standing under the string lights near the garden plots. Alone. He didn't approach right away, just raised a hand slightly. A cautious wave. I nodded, slowly walked over. Didn't expect to see you here, I said. I almost didn't come. Is she here? No. She wanted to, but she's not ready. I studied his face, older, softer around the eyes, but still carrying the weight of decades. He looked past me toward the community center window, where Eli was laughing with a girl in a red hoodie. He's good, my father said. He is. There was a long pause. I read her letter, I said. It felt honest. He nodded. It was, I'm not ready to sit at a dinner table and pretend nothing happened. I don't expect you to, but maybe someday, I added, surprised by my own words. Not because she deserves it, but because Eli might. He looked down at his shoes. She was raised to believe love had to be earned. That silence was safer than sorrow. I don't excuse her, but I understand where the wound came from. I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure I wanted to understand yet. But I let the silence sit between us. This time, it wasn't hostile. It was just shared. Before we went back inside, he said, "Thank you for not shutting the door completely." I thought I had. I replied. But Eli kicked it back open. That night, as we drove home, Eli leaned his head against the window, the streetlights flickering past like slow strobe lights. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't fought back?" he asked. "All the time." "I'm glad you did." "I didn't feel brave at the time," I admitted. "Most days, I felt scared." "Still," he said, turning to look at me. "You stood up. That matters." I smiled. "You did too." He grinned. "Yeah, but I had a good role model." We pulled into the driveway just as the wind picked up soft, warm, carrying the scent of new grass and early summer. I paused before turning off the engine, taking a moment to look at our house, not perfect, not grand, but ours. And for once, I didn't feel like a woman trying to hold everything together. I felt like someone who already had. The next morning, I found a new drawing taped to the fridge. Eli's work again, simple. Black ink on white paper. It showed two trees, one gnarled and weathered, the other young and growing beside it. Their roots intertwined below the surface, tangled but connected. Above them, handwritten in pencil, were the words, "We don't always grow in the sun. Sometimes, we grow because of the storm." I left it up. Didn't ask questions. Didn't move it. Because some stories don't need an ending. They just need space to keep becoming.